Welcome back to another episode of the Miami Heat Roundtable. I'm your host, Amir. I'm joined today by Trent. You can find him at the Miami Heat Network. We also got Martel. You can find him at the Miami Heat Zone podcast. And we have another special guest joining the program today. We have Eternal from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. How's it going, Eternal?
What's going on, everybody? Hope you all doing all right.
We're doing great. Thanks again for joining. So, Eternal, right now we know there's not a lot of new reports out there
Mhm.
regarding Miami Heat news. The season's almost over now. The Celtics are unfortunately up 3-0. We can touch on that a little bit later right now, but
Mhm.
Dallas is disappointing Miami Heat fans because I'm sure most Miami Heat fans want the Celtics to lose, but also I'm sure a lot of Miami Heat fans still hate the Dallas Mavericks. So it is kind of a lose-lose, but I'm just upset Jason Tatum's going to win his first championship, but I'm just hoping the consolation is he doesn't win MVP, which it doesn't seem like he will. So I guess we'll have some consolation to showcase that he is not the man. But
Right.
anyway, Eternal. So the biggest thing we've been talking about with guests is the Jimmy Butler extension. Obviously, talking about Donovan Mitchell and his extension. So
Mhm.
I want to get your perspective on two parts. So
Mhm.
first part, who do you think has a better case and argument? Is it Jimmy Butler and Bernie Lee asking for the max? We know he's doubling down, saying he wants to stay in Miami, return to Miami, but he wants the max. He's going to ask for it on July 7th, even though
Mhm.
Pat Riley said he wants to take a wait and see approach, see if Jimmy could be healthy and available, and lead us to better seeding, right? So we don't have such a hard path in the playoffs.
Right.
So who do you think, in your opinion, has a better argument? Is it Pat Riley and Mickey in the front office, or is it Jimmy? And then my second part to the question is, how do you predict this whole thing's going to play out? Do you think we cave in this offseason, give him an extension? Do you think we actually do wait and see, and there could be a bunch of turmoil and backlash? Do you think we even trade him? So, what are your thoughts on the whole scenario?
As far as who has like the more leeway, right, or that has a better advantage in this situation, I feel like that's a little tricky, right? Because you could go two ways about it. The Miami Heat have been in the play in the last 2 years, right? So if you look at it from the macro, and you're supposed to be a top 10 superstar player, which we can bank on. We say that you have been this in some capacity, whether they just be in the playoffs or coming off of last year. Last year, Jimmy was coming off of one of his best seasons in the league last year before going on and tearing the Milwaukee Bucks up. But that's not the case this season. This season, Jimmy didn't put up a lot of great numbers. Some of his numbers did fall in a lot of different categories. You also didn't get 70 plus games from Jimmy. Um, I think you got what around 60, I think
60,
60.
I think it was 65.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the most he's ever played in a Heat uniform.
Yeah. So you didn't get all the games, but some of those, when you break it down to the micro, um, in detail, is that Jimmy missed some time, which his cousin confirmed a lot of it. The Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler's camp are really, really quiet on the whole like injury thing. It's just not Jimmy. It's been other players. They won't make excuses if guys are hurt or whatever. Um, not from their head coach, not from their star player or whatever. But Jimmy was dealing with some injuries, this season, and also some private matters. Then he had the suspension, so we very could have well seen Jimmy play an extra 8 to 10 games, and then he does make the 70 plus mark. But it just wasn't about the games missed, right? It was the games when Jimmy played, and you didn't get the same type of Jimmy Butler, even if you guys want to say that he was coasting. You didn't get the same type of attack and finishing efficiency and things of that nature. You had like a little blip of that post All Star break before he went back out because of the suspension, and then when he came back, it just looked like we just started things back over. So, um, and then you also have the thing like you can make the case either way, right? For Jimmy, Jimmy can say, "Hey, I was dealing with this. You know that I was dealing with this, regardless of what the public may know. You know, I was dealing with this, yada yada yada." And then we also saw Jimmy turn things up in that Philly play-in game before getting hurt. and then play the rest of the damn game. That dude is a psycho. I don't know how you play on that type of injury. Um, so I mean, I guess you can make the case a lot of different ways. From Miami's, standpoint, the case I just made, but also it's like, hey, look, you and Bam are up for extension this summer. Um, we want to compete. There is a pivot move that we need to make, whether it's retooling the roster to be championship ready, or just going in a different direction, just and kind of riding this thing out. Um, there's things that Miami has to consider in that regard, but I do think that Jimmy has a little bit more advantage, right? You almost made 3 finals in 5 seasons, right? You had the 2020 bubble run, the 22 run, which more than likely would have ended in the finals if Peyton Pritchard doesn't pull on Jimmy's knee, if PJ Tucker doesn't get hurt. So you're dealing with some injuries in that particular series. You did make the finals last year, but again, Jimmy was hurt. So Jimmy has showed up and he has performed at a very, very high top 3, top 5 level in the playoffs, right? There was, even something today, somebody had posted where the top 3 um, final scorers of the finals in the 2020s is, I think it's Jimmy, Jaylen Brown, and Giannis. So, and you consider that Jimmy was hurt uh, last finals, those numbers could have been even more. But I just think, with the success that you have seen with Jimmy Butler being there, not just to put it all on him, but as a combination of him, Eric Spoelstra, Bam Adebayo, and just getting the best out of the players that they do get. But I do think Jimmy has a little bit of leeway, just because what he's been able to accomplish in a short amount of time. Um, and also Miami has a little memory in the back of their mind, Amir, guys, of letting Wade walk away, which I understand is a little bit different because Wade won championships, but you're talking about Wade's disciple. So do you want to repeat the same thing, especially when Jimmy has walked in, loved y'all, speaks very highly of y'all, and all of that. So,
But do you think Miami will ultimately wait and see, or do you think they will offer that extension? Because we've had mixed reviews from different guests. We've had some say that Jimmy's not getting that extension. Like, if it
I,
is an extension, it's gonna be a lower, and how is he gonna react to that, right? Because based on everything you just said, like, how do you think it plays out? Just like, what do you predict will actually happen?
I think Jimmy, as soon as the finals are over, I would not be surprised. This is not me using any sources. I just think that Jimmy will sign that extension as soon as it is able to be signed. So I think Miami does pay him.
Okay, but Eternal, right? I saw a
Mhm.
lot of people on Twitter, say that it's the front office's fault or it's Jimmy's fault or Tyler's fault. Where can we really point the blame? Because really, don't get me wrong, could the front office have done better in terms of building around Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler? But there's a lot of things that didn't really go our way, but then at the same time we had a lot of injuries. So where do you really see the biggest fault with this run? I mean, I don't think Jimmy Butler's completely off the hook, especially when his agent says, yeah, there was maybe a handful of games where he really didn't want to play, which is crazy to me because you're our max guy, you're our guy. How do you not really want to play and you're getting paid $50 million? And how can we give this guy an extension when his body might not even be able to hold up? You know what I mean? And if we can't count on him to even make it to the NBA Finals or make it to the playoffs alone, where do we go with Jimmy Butler?
Well, I can tell you, now that the cat is out of the bag, that Jimmy was dealing with some injuries this season, coming into the season, and also dealing with, a lot of personal stuff. That part
The
I'm not.
yeah,
That
the
part I'm not gonna really go into.
the
Uh,
personal part I won't talk on. The injuries, which that's kind of more to the point. It's like, how do we navigate with a guy like Jimmy Butler and we really can't count on him health wise?
well, the thing is, I don't think he really um, took the time to allow his body to heal. I mean, he played on that ankle, which was a very severe sprain. He continued to play on it. You know, he only missed one game, and shout out to him for being a warrior. But the reality is, there's going to be some consequences because of that. Now, I will say, as far as what you can expect going forward, we do know that Jimmy has had more time off because Miami had a early exit, and also Jimmy didn't get played in the first round. He wasn't going to even be able to come back until, at best, I think the end of the second round or beginning of the conference finals. But Jimmy has a lot more time to heal, and be able to come back better equipped next season. Here's what I can tell you for certain: whether they get Jimmy that extension or not, you don't get him an extension, he's going to play like a man. Like, he's going to play with his head on fire next season, and you just make it the best Jimmy Butler season ever, but he walks. Right? So, and I do understand the concern as far as, if you're going to get a healthy Jimmy or whatever, but, to kind of counteract that, I would say that, just giving him the benefit of the doubt, being able for an athlete to have a longer period of time to heal. I think he'll come back healthier, and especially, hopefully not dealing with the same things again, personally wise. But if he's able to come back healthy, I think, we'll see something closer to 22, 22, 23.
What's going on, Eternal?
What's
Nice to meet you. Thanks again. Thanks to hopping on the show. I've been listening to what you've been saying and all this Jimmy stuff, and at the end of the day, man, he's getting paid. I understand we all go through life stuff, injuries occur at the end of the day. But when you're that type of player, when you're the best player in this organization, and you walk around like you the dog, and if he was injured, we would have been if he wasn't injured, we'd be in the finals. It's the way he walks, like, it's the way he like talks about himself and all these little things. I'm pretty sure you see all over social media of him trolling. That's fine, but when we need you to play, we need you to be out there, and he just hasn't really been out there for us. And so, when it comes to a contract extension, I agree to some points that you said about that he has some leverage, because, I mean, look what he has done for this organization. Haven't got the job done just yet, but there's still big accomplishments and stuff like that. So, but outside of this whole Jimmy thing, first I want to ask, do you think we land any type of stars? I don't want to say Donovan Mitchell, because I think he's done. I don't think we're locking him up. But outside, a Murray, a Kyle Kuzma, maybe a Grant, is there any specific player that you think this Miami Heat team goes for that improves his roster? Because there's no way we run it back once again.
No, I don't think Miami's going to run it back. Like I was saying earlier, whether they pivot to getting ready for another championship run, or just pivot towards, bridging the gap, utilizing the young guys, and getting ready for that next build. I don't think Miami at all is going to come back looking the same. Now, does it mean you'll have only 5 people from last year's team? I don't think it's going to be that, but I do think there'll be some reshuffling for whatever path they decide to go. As far as, if I think, did they have a shot at probably getting some guys? We just did a playback. I know they did a pod on Larry Marketing. That one's a little hard. That's going to be very difficult because of the asking price of what Danny Ainge has been asking for post Larry popping on the scene, for Utah. And I think it's kind of similar situation between Utah and Brooklyn as far as what they're asking for Larry and Mikal Bridges. All that stuff, as we have seen, really depends on the front offices, and sometimes even the owners being able to come together, talk, it goes effective, and being able to work out a deal. I don't know if they'll be able to get Larry. I'm sure they will try. If they hear enough, intel for it to be, worth a shot, think Miami is going to always check in on certain players to see if it's worth possibly making a deal for. It just depends on what Danny Ainge and the Utah Jazz are going to ask for, and if Miami is willing to pay that for Lauri Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen is a good player, could make the team a whole lot better, but that's not Dame Lillard or Donovan Mitchell, KD, and names of that matter. I do think they'll knock on their door. I think they'll probably check in on Trae Young and Dejounte Murray. Just what I feel. I think they probably will. It just really just depends on what direction in that regard is Atlanta going to go in. We've seen reports of Atlanta maybe there being some type of discussion between Atlanta and San Antonio of sending Trae Young to San Antonio to pair with Wemby. From what some sources have been hearing, the San Antonio kind of want to fast track that a little bit, not just wait 2 to 3 years to allow young talent to build, but if they have the opportunity to get somebody like Trae Young or somebody else to pair with Wemby, then they're probably going to shoot for it, which doesn't help Miami because there's somebody else that has way more assets than you have. So it really just depends on what direction Atlanta wants to go. But I do think Miami will probably call and check in on those two players, who I feel like will probably realistically between the two of them. I think that's kind of hard to say, but I think Miami probably has a better shot at getting Dejounte Murray than they do Trae Young. I think Trae Young probably is going to cost you a lot more than it would Dejounte Murray, but we have seen crazier things happen. Another name, I think you said Kyle Kuzma. Kuz could be a good addition, but I don't know if adding Kuz is enough to get you. I feel like it'll put you in the top 3 of the conference. I don't know if it's enough to get you over the hump when it comes to whoever comes out west. The machinations of this team really is dependent upon not only who you have in the starting lineup, but as we've seen in this playoffs, in the past couple of playoffs, like what does your collective look like? How do they blend together? How is the chemistry? And when the bench comes in with some of the starters, are they clicking? Are they able to maintain a lead? If you do drop a lead, are you able to fight back? And all those things. And also, which we have seen for the past 4 seasons with this team, are you able to stay healthy? So Dejounte Murray, who has a very strong health record, Lauri Markkanen to a degree, some of these players that you would want them to look at, you already have, some of those have injury concerns. But Lauri, Kuz, Dejounte, possibly Trae. I would say probably. You said Jeremy Grant, and it's funny that you said that. I feel like Jeremy could help. I do feel like Jeremy could help, but because of the unique situation in Miami in, because you have 2 contract extensions that are available for Jimmy and Bam, that contract from Jeremy, you have to be extremely sure that that Jeremy is the piece to get you to the next level, because everything else under them is going to be very complicated as far as how you put the team together. But if you made me pick, I'd probably say Dejounte Murray is probably a more realistic option out of those people.
And lastly, I think we're going to be most likely losing Caleb Martin, Haywood Highsmith. Like, where do you want to go in that direction? Like, are you looking at free agency? I know free agency is pretty, dry to replace those players. I mean, we have Jaime, who would play a big role next season. But are you looking at our draft pick, free agency, like Jamal Cain, Alonzo Williams? Like, what direction do you think we're going to go, losing those 2 big pieces coming off our bench?
So I do know that the cupboard is dry as far as the undrafted, right? Like, previous seasons you had Gabe Max that was already in the wheelhouse. They brought Caleb in on a phone call. Those things were kind of, unexpected, but kind of, in the works or whatever, besides Caleb. in this particular instance, it wasn't really a strong season for Caleb. It was very up and down, dealing with some injuries. But that's not going to stop him from asking for a certain price, right? So then you have to determine, based off of what you saw, based on the injury that he has, is that going to progress forward? Like, is he going to see a start decline? Is it worth giving him that contract? Haywood, I was kind of disappointed. I'm not gonna lie to you. I thought Haywood would have a stronger um, playoff showing than he ended up having. I thought his defense was okay at times. It wasn't the same level of defensive, um, elite from him during that time. But also too, the shooting wasn't there like you needed it to be from Haywood, and those it just came at the wrong time considering, he is up for a new contract. So I think, especially in this new NBA, and especially with the moves that Miami probably want to make, that they're probably going to want to possibly bring Haywood back. I don't think they're going to stress themselves if they don't bring him back. You do have the top 15 pick. You do have pick 43. You do have available Tyler, Duncan, possibly Terry to use in trades to get some other guys back. Besides that, you already have Josh Richardson is coming back next season. He's probably going to pick up his player option. Jaime is probably going to, Jaime and Nico are probably going to get bigger roles next season. And also, too, DeLon Wright. They're interested in bringing DeLon Wright back. So you got to really realistically think about where these minutes are going to come from, and where these opportunities are going to come from. And Miami does have a way of improving the team, specifically in the guard and wing position, from the draft and also via trades.
Yeah, I see Jaime obviously coming off the bench, and he's gonna, back up perhaps Jimmy. And then we're gonna have Kevin is gonna obviously back up Bam, but if we could either draft or get someone in free agency like we have no money. We're a first apron team. So obviously we have to get, veteran minimum guys for like that 3 million range. And we have a mid-level exception that we can use hopefully on a decent player like an Obi Toppin or Valanciunas type player. But right now we have to hope that we can get a backup big either in the draft or through free agency, and also the backup point guard you mentioned. It might go to DeLon Wright, which I think would be good and probably just cost that $3 million for the vet minimum right there. Um, but yeah, I think because Kevin, I assume Jovic is going to start. If we don't make any trades, we still have Jimmy Butler on the roster. I'm assuming Jovic is going to start, so he'll be our 4. Jimmy will be the 3, and then Bam will fill out the front court, and then we'll have Kevin, Jaime coming off the bench. But then we need someone else. I don't know if we have trust in an Orlando Robinson yet, right? He's still on I don't know if he's guaranteed next year. I know he was on a standard contract.
Mm-mm.
And then Thomas Bryant, who knows what he's going to do? He has a player option too. So like,
right, he has a player option. I don't know how he has a player option, but he has a player option. Yeah.
and I mean, he could very well sign it. I don't know if he would. He's still 20. He's the same age as Bam.
Yeah, he is.
He's becoming a journeyman, and like I think he's unreliable on the defensive end. Like I feel like he did a lot better offensively, like when he was on the Wizards in Los Angeles. I think he had more opportunity, essentially, in those systems. Because Spo had him on a short leash, so obviously chemistry goes up and down. Like he's been ready. Like he did stay ready when that Kevin Love injury went down towards the end of the season, and he went from not playing 15 games to playing the last 14 and playing pretty well. So, but I still wouldn't want to rely on him or Orlando essentially backing up Bam. So since
Yeah.
that's the case, we have Kevin, but Kevin's undersized too. Like Kevin's 6'8", he's a power forward. He should be backing up Jovic essentially. So I think there's a lot of like spots that we can fulfill, and we need to shuffle the deck to a certain degree, and I think we will naturally based on Haywood most likely leaving as well as Caleb. But I'm hoping based on what you said, what Trent said, hopefully we can get at least a Kuzma type player for a Tyler Hero, or I've always wanted to even possibly trade Tyler's $30 million contract. So next season his contract's like 29-30.
Mm-hmm.
If we could somehow get like a Bruce Brown or KCP, like 2 guys that are making 15 million. Obviously, you're not getting both, but like if there's a guy in that range that you can trade for, 2 guys like that, essentially to get Tyler Hero, that'd be that'd be a good deal, I think. Like to just change this roster's like shuffling the deck essentially.
I mean, it depends. I think Miami's going to first try to go for broke, right? They're going to try to go for some star players or fringe star players. And if those things don't work out, I do think they'll probably pivot to what some would call lateral moves. I don't really see it like that. I just think better fitting pieces, which is what some were asking for at the trade deadline. So if you can divvy up Tyler's and Duncan contract into, either some better fitting pieces as far as two guys, with really large contracts around the same price, or smaller contracts. So maybe you get three to four guys with on much smaller contracts, but they help fill out the roster, right? So now you're not worried about depth. And then you can kind of continue to use your so what you do is you up the roles for Nico and Jaime, depending on who you bring back, and you use your 15th pick and the 43 pick to fill out whatever else holes that you have. And you also have Terry if you want to use that contract for something else.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yep, I agree with all that. Before we close out, Eternal, we want to thank you again so much for joining the show. Really appreciate the time. I know you're on 5 Reasons Sports Network, so you could obviously check out Eternal there, and obviously host a lot of the playback shows. But is there anywhere else you want to let the audience know they can find your work?
Oh man, listen, just come check us out on Playback. It's Playback/5 Reasons. We do a lot more than just Heat games there. We're trying to grow our general NBA audience. So we always welcome people to come join there. We will be watching some breaking down some. The Panthers are in the finals for hockey. For all you hockey fans out there, so you come check out some coverage there. We do have some Dolphins coverage going on as well, and we will be expanding out into WNBA coverage along with that. But yeah, come check us out on Playback/5 Reasons. You can check us out on 5 on the Floor, the podcast. I'll be on there sometimes. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Eternal Bast, BAST. So you come check us out there. But yeah, I do have some questions for you guys before we get out of here.
Go for it.
Before we get out of here, give me the best case scenario for Jaime and Nico next year.
Like in terms of like how they play?
Growth, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Go
Well,
ahead,
I think,
Martel.
I think that Jaime Jaquez Jr. could honestly be a solid rotational guy for anyone in the league. I think that as long as he's able to get that 3-point shot just a little bit better and just slightly better on the defensive end. But I think he'll be able to definitely get stronger because, he even admitted that he was kind of tired, close to the end of the season. So, he kind of really wasn't used to that NBA grind. My concern is Nico. What type of leap is he going to take? Because I know everybody says that he's a unicorn and they see the potential, but I want to kind of see more than just flashes. I know that he really hasn't played too many games when you really look at it, but I really want to see him make a leap. But other than that, I think that Jaime's going to be a solid rotational piece, kind of like what Caleb Martin was for us if we do lose Caleb. My concern is just Jovic, to be honest with you.
Okay, so what's the base? What do you see like the best that could happen for Nico next season? Because that's what I'm asking.
Can he be a 12-5 guy? 12 points, 5 rebounds next to Bam, and just play good enough defense to be next to him? That's what I see.
Okay, and that's the best. That's the best that you see for Nico next season.
Yeah. I mean, for now.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I agree. It's just based on his role. Right now, he said like in the offseason he needs to work on his entire game, his ball handling, his shooting, his passing, and all that stuff, his defense. But within his role, he knows he's supposed to be like a spread four. Like he's just, I need to spot up and hit my threes. Like he went from 1 attempt to was like 3.5 3-point attempts. We know he's capable of being that point forward and going coast to coast and leading the transition and off the break, but he hasn't had a lot of opportunity right now. Like he understands like as long as Jimmy and Bam and Tyler and Terry on this team, he's a role player. So depending on his role, like and depending on the roster, I mean, I think he has a high ceiling. I talked to Martell about this today too. Like if he was on the Wizards, if he was on the Magic, he's only playing 19 minutes per game. He's only played 61 total games. I was saying Jaime's played more games than Jovic in 2 seasons, right? In his 1 season. So um it just depends. Like I think what Martell said, if he can get to like 11, 12 points, 5, 6 rebounds, 3 assists per game, I'm assuming he's going to jump from 19 minutes to like maybe 23, 24 minutes. Then I think that's what he's going to do. But if he was on another team, like, and he actually had 30 minutes and he was thrown in the fire, like, I think he could be a guy that could average like, 16, 17 points, like not in the best efficiency, but that's what I think for Jovic. I mean, I hope he becomes like our like Lamar Odom type guy, but we don't. He's not going to be in that role, right? Like he's not going to have the ball in his hands necessarily. So
Listen, Eternal. They're not answering the question correctly at all. But what I will say is, I don't even like Jovic, but I'll answer the question correctly. You said the best that you want to see Jovic, pretty much like the best of the best. Jovic literally has everything you want in a basketball player. He can shoot, he can dribble, he can play. His playmaking's solid already. So if I'm looking at that type of player, I would remind, like, if I can get a Cat, like example, a player like Cat, he can shoot. Obviously, he's a little smaller, but like if he can space out the floor and just knock down that shot, get some rebounds, to give me some playmaking, or like a Thaddeus Young when he was a little bit younger, because he's a good in the dunker spot, a good passer, and stuff like that. So that's the best of the best of Jovic. Do I think he gets there? Never. I want him off my team.
you're tripping.
I would
Dude,
go more or less a Kyle Kuzma type. I think if he could give us that, now we're talking.
he's not Kyle Kuzma. Come on, did you guys not hear what I said? I'm the old guy in this crew. So Lamar Odom, he's a point forward. Come
Yeah,
on,
or
he's like a
or
Lamar
Lamar
Odom.
Odom.
He could.
But
He's a
Eternal, where do you have
playmaker.
him at? Where do you have him at?
Okay, so to answer the question that I asked you guys, right? What is the best that I could see? The best case scenario I could see for Jaime and Nico next season, right? Best case scenario is that they become a part of your closing crew, and you get above average to high level defense from them. You get high impact plays from them on a consistent basis, somewhere between 15 to 19 points, respectively. Not saying that not saying both of them will score both 19 points. Just one of them may score 15, the other may score 19. I do think Jaime will probably be the higher scorer, while Nico would probably be more all the way around. But if I would have to say like best case scenario, I think that would be Nico winning most improved player next year. Just because the conversation I had with him, and also from the growth that you saw this season, with the type of defense that he was playing early in the season, and also being able to kind of make that type of stride during the same season. That's, it's normally progress that you see from season to season. But just being able to not only play better one-on-one defense, but communicating, properly on defense, being able to rotate over on a string, being able to kind of direct other guys. Not saying he was out there like Bam, that's not what I'm saying. But just like you seeing that jump, seeing that growth, and you can stick him on Porzingis. He can get switched out a couple of times on Tatum or Brown and hold his own a little bit. I do think, and also like Amir said, we haven't really seen a lot of what he can do on ball because he had to learn how to play off ball and, play in a much lesser role as far as that goes with Jimmy, Tyler, Terry, and Bam, having more of those opportunities. But I do think you saw a little bit more trust starting to happen for him. But I do think as far as next year, best case scenario, most improved for Nico. And I think Jaime takes it up another tier for what he was doing pre-groin injury. And Amir, to further your point, he is of that Hito Turkoglu tree.
Hito or Gallinari, I think we've heard as well, possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm just hoping that it's more Lamar Odom because he could be more of that like playmaking distributor. Because obviously, he likes to pass. I mean, he has a knack
Oh, yeah.
obviously for that right now. So,
Yeah.
Martel, do you have anything else you want to end with?
Listen, Eternal, thank you for coming on the show. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and thank you for all the support.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks again.